How does the beautifully crafted, beautifully written, most eloquent line in sports history possibly read? The thrill of victory, the agony of defeat. That's our topic tonight here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in, everyone. Good to see all of you. Yes, welcome in. Want to get your feedback on tonight's topic. Most exhilarating win, most excruciating loss as a sports fan. And of course, as always, you produce the show, so anything is on the table regarding the game we love, college football. It is April 2nd. I did not come up with a good idea for April Fool's Day here on the channel. I threw a few ideas by a couple people and they said, Mark, better not go there. Better not go there. Don't take it to that extreme. You might want to back off on that one. So no April Fool's joke on you yesterday. I've got a year to think it over. Where can I go to the line but not cross the line? All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football here. The Amazon link is in the description section of all the videos. Please use the Amazon link when you're shopping. Shopping at Amazon, yes. And we know that hundreds of millions do in this country. And of course, we have an audience of hundreds of millions here at the Voice of College Football. So please use the Amazon link that we provide in the description section. It will help us build the channel and it will help you because you continue to get the content here while you also have the same Amazon shopping experience. Join us on Patreon as well. We're right there. So again, here we go. Most excruciating loss as a sports fan, most exhilarating win. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest win or the biggest loss. I'm expecting most of you are going to serve up championship games because they mean the most. But it could be a mid-September game in a regular season in which your team went 7-5. But for whatever reason, that game meant the world to you. It was against your arch rival, or it was the last game you ever went to with your dad, or for whatever reason, it means so much to you. And I'll share my stories as well. Let me jump into the live chat. I'll share my stories. And of course, our number here is 860-499-3332. 3332. I enjoy saying that. 3332. 3332. I knew if I did too many threes too many times consecutively, I would screw it up at some point. 860-499-3332. On to the live chat. Phil, answering the question right out of the gate. Phil B., thank you so much for joining in. We always appreciate seeing you. So we get this from Phil. Most exhilarating win for me was when I was at the 2013 Florida State Auburn championship game at the Rose Bowl, of course. Florida State had the biggest comeback in BCS national championship game history. I would have to believe that that would be the case. Not that I don't believe you, Phil. I'm just going through history. And of course, the game was only played for 16 years. And it was 21-3 Auburn. 21-3, 18-point comeback. Yeah, I don't remember anything close to that. 1998, 1999, 2000, 01, 02, 03, 4, 5. Although Texas was down, I believe, 11. 38-27, something in that range. 38-27, one with 2 touchdowns, 41-38, I believe. Texas was down 11. 06, 07. No. Ohio State was up 10-0 on LSU in 07. They lost by 2 touchdowns. 08, 9, 10. There you go. 2011 was the 21-0 game. 2012 was the biggest rout in the history of this game. Even bigger than USC and Oklahoma was that Alabama domination of, D-Rock Irish, Notre Dame in 2012. 2013, greatest comeback. That must have been exciting, Phil. Being a Florida State fan, having not experienced a championship on the national stage at the national level for 14 years. I don't know how old you are, so I don't know if you experienced the 99 championship. Then in person, 18 down, big favorite, but 18 down, comeback. One of the great BCS championship games that I don't think it's ranked as highly by people that I see that create these lists as it should. Awesome, awesome game. I knew one thing, that I had to take Auburn and the 10 points. I knew that. I did not pick Auburn to win, so I got the hedge bet perfect on that one. Florida State wins, take the 10. All right, good stuff here. Right out of the gate from Phil. Phil comes strong out of the gate with a great example. All right, Penn State fan 24, good to see you as well. Daniel, thank you for joining. Good to see you as well. Yo, what up, Mark? Daniel, I don't believe you've ever received your proper introduction and welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So here it is. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Daniel, would love to know who you root for, how long you've been watching. Bill, you demand, Mark. Thank you. Year-round enjoyment. Thank you, Bill. That is so nice of you. Bill Rupp. I once worked for a man. He was the news director at one of the TV stations where I worked. He was my boss. His last name was Rupp. I don't know if there's a connection, a relation there. All right. Good to see you. Thank you so much for that, Bill. Bill, those kind of comments keep me going. Those kind of comments keep me going. D-Rock Irish, what you got for us? Good evening, everyone. Easy but painful. It all happened within 2 weeks to Notre Dame. Football, 1993. And sorry, I'm squinting. 1993, November. Yes, I remember it well. Notre Dame defeated Florida State. Epic game. Just the latest of the game of the century tags. Florida State, pretty substantial favorite in that game. Nothing crazy, but they were supposed to be the better team. Notre Dame really outplayed them in that game. Florida State had to score late to make it 31-24. Then they came back down the field, and Notre Dame held them out 31-24. Huge win, obviously. And then the next week at home. So the letdown wasn't even going on the road. Let's understand that Boston College team was pretty good. 9-3 that season. But Notre Dame lost to Boston College 41-39 on a last-second field goal. All right, let's go to the phone lines here, and I will post the number in just a second. As long as everybody keeps in mind, I will post the phone number in just a second as long as everybody acknowledges Amazon. Grab that Amazon link, do my Amazon shopping using the link. I'm going to drive you crazy with that. All right, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Oh, it's David. David's on the line.
The man that gives college football its voice, Mark Rogers. How are you, sir?
I am doing great, David. And I am going to get you properly circuited here. I think we're all set. How you doing today?
Excellent. I saw the topic for today, and boy, do I have some ammunition as an Ohio State fan. It's
I bet
the
you do.
90s.
Yes, it probably overlaps many of my experiences. So fire away, David.
Yes. All right. Well, it starts as the first Ohio State Michigan game I ever watched. A certain kicker who I'm not going to name and a certain quarterback made a guarantee in 1986 and came into Columbus and beat a very good Ohio State team 26-24. And that started kind of some frustration that I had over the course of the years because that was a team destined for Pasadena, Mark. And that was a very, very frustrating loss.
It surely was. It was an exciting game coming out of an era. I'm not going to say that was the first game that featured offensive explosion in that series, but it was the first few. 1983 was a pretty high scoring game. And when I say high scoring, David, you know what I'm talking about, 24-21
Sure.
type of high scoring, because the first few that I saw, this was a slight bit before your time, I saw 14-3, 14-6, 9-3. But anyway, the Chris Carters of the world emerged on both sides, those type of players, and the game changed a little bit. Both teams opened it up a little bit, more so that they had under new head coaches. Well, not on the Michigan side. Anyway, yes, that was an exciting game, but the Ohio State defense just could not get a hold of Jamie Morris in that game. He had a monster game, and Chris Spielman tackled him and other people 29 times, but most of those, unfortunately, were downfield.
Yes, that's one of the lines from that game. Chris made a lot of tackles that day, but they kept on coming further and further down the field, and it was a shame because those are still maybe my two favorite Buckeye players to this day, Chris Spielman and Chris Carter. Well, they're definitely within the top 5.
They are both on my favorites list as well. And I will also say it was disappointing because, yes, the Big Ten championship, the Rose Bowl, to me is near and dear. But even back then, for everyone, that was the goal. That was the destination. That's all that mattered. You play in the Big Ten, you win the championship, you go to the Rose Bowl, whether you're 8-3 or 11-0, whatever. If you get to Pasadena, that's the goal. And after the 2 losses to start the season, because much was expected of the team, and we know that the Alabama game was close. The Washington game, who knows what happened out there? I think that was one of those non-televised games where it was like, oh my word, how are they getting? You know what? That game was televised. I do remember watching that game because I remember early in that game, I don't know why this stands out in my memory, David, but I think the game was on CBS, and there was a very interesting angle, at least at the time, of the punt block that Ohio State suffered for a touchdown, where they had, maybe the camera was on the ground or something. But anyway, the Ohio State punter, I guess that would have been Tom Tupa, was on the back end line pretty much, had a punt blocked. Anyway, they got destroyed at Washington. They start 0-2. They barely beat Colorado the next week at home. But then they got on a roll, and it all came together, and they looked to be one of the best teams in the country by the end of the season. And, of course, won a big bowl game.
Sure. And that probably was one of Bo's better Michigan teams, you'd have to say. I mean, his 85 and 86 teams were really good. You know, the Harbaugh-Morris combination was a tough combination there. You know, they lost at Iowa on the field goal in 85. Sure enough, they go to the Rose Bowl and they lose to an Arizona State team that I'll always remember was coached by a guy by the name of
John Cooper.
That's right. And wouldn't you know, I think that had a lot to do with him getting the job with that victory, I later heard. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Oh,
Mark?
I always believed that to be true. That's right.
I mean, I think that him winning that bowl game.
And
all right, can I?
And I understand your context of stating that was one of Bo's better teams.
Yeah,
it certainly was a more dynamic and explosive team than the teams that he fielded in the mid 70s. But those teams, he had a great run. Of course, he's one of the great coaches of all time, and we all know his name. But for not winning a national championship, from the time that he stepped on campus, he pretty much finished in the top 10. Like, I've looked at the numbers. It's very consistent excellence that he brought to Ann Arbor. They were always finishing in the top 10.
Well, as the line from one sports writer said, because he went to more Rose Bowls than any other coach, but Bo don't know roses. I mean, he went 2-8 in Rose Bowl games, if I'm not mistaken, Mark. So he did not have a whole lot of success out in Pasadena. From I'm sure you remember a lot of those games.
I do.
I know I remember a few of them. So I want to get to the 90s here, and I'm going to let you tell me, Mark. 93, 95, 96. From an Ohio State perspective, which one's the most frustrating? You tell me.
96 for these reasons. Number one, I do think it was the best team. 95 had the most stars, but I thought 96 was a little bit better team once it was all said and done. Also, 96, because you had the frustration of all the other years building up to that one. And also because, unfortunately, in 95, without an overtime rule, they trailed in the fourth quarter, I think 31-16. They scored to make it 31-23. Then they're down 8. And really, as an Ohio State fan, you're watching that game in frustration because you also know, even if they score and get the 2-point conversion, they're only going to tie this game and they're not going to the Rose Bowl.
Right. Well, I remember at the time they went for it on fourth down and there was a minute and change. I'm like, kick the field goal and go for the onside kick because you have to win this game.
That's right. You
know?
That's right. Yep.
And I must say real quick, Mark, the 93 game is kind of overlooked because that was a very good football team that should have been in Pasadena. And that was Cooper's first really good football team, his first 10-win team and the first team that won a bowl game for him. And I do think, and they went to Ann Arbor and they didn't even make the bus trip. I mean, they got ran out that stadium that day. So that wasn't very good either. I mean, that was a 9-0-1 and a pretty good football team.
That team got off to a great start. And then you could see them grinding down through the season. They got off to a great start and they continued to win. To your point, of course, they had no losses in the tie at Wisconsin. But even games like Indiana that they were playing those types of opponents early in the season and just lowering the boom on them. You know, they barely beat Indiana. They barely beat Michigan State in November. And then they they ran out of gas against Michigan, but not to score any points. Oh my, there's a lot of coaching that has to go into that result.
Well, there was a period there where I still feel to this day, had he not won in 1994, Mark, he was going to lose his job. He was gone. I still feel that to this day. And there was rumblings at the time that he was gone if he did not win that game in 94. I don't know if you heard that same thing, but because, I mean, he couldn't have lost again to them.
Yeah, I don't necessarily remember that, but it wouldn't surprise me. It seems like sound logic. I think maybe his mistake was he confused trying to take pressure off of his team against Michigan versus he just didn't find that right balance. And I think what he was trying to accomplish, what he had to know how big that game was. He had to know how big that game was before he arrived on campus. If you're in the culture of college football, you know how big Ohio State and Michigan is. But if he didn't know, he obviously knew after the first season. And I think he was just trying to take pressure off of his team, thinking, hey, if I recruit well, which he did, I'm going to have a good enough team that if I take the pressure off them and just say, hey, this is the next game, it's an important game, but that he was kind of taking pressure off them. I truly think that was his strategy. People didn't think he cared enough about the game. Of course he did.
Right. I will say this, Mark. I think that, it's a shame, though, because like the early years, you could see, and we talked about this in the past, he wasn't inherited the most talented teams, as we talked about the other coaches did. But the shame of it is he built up some of the best, most talented Ohio State teams with some of the greatest players in the history of the university. And it's just like and then, by the way, the worst loss, I don't even need to say it, was 98. To me, it's tough to lose to the other guys from up north, but to me, the 98 loss will always, because they blew that game, and they were clearly the best team in the country in 98. And, I just think that's the one. By the way, whatever happened to that Michigan State coach? Did he go on to do anything, Mark?
Yeah, we're going to have to Google him. Maybe if somebody in the live chat, Nick Saban, Saban, I believe it's pronounced Saban. If somebody can look him up in the live chat to see whatever happened to him. Maybe he went back to Kent State and became an assistant coach or something.
Right. Maybe he's coaching secondary at Kent State or doing something. I don't know.
David, I've got a question for you before you leave here, because I actually, in the spirit of being a good sports fan, just overall sports fan, and because it's well into the off season, and many people brought to my attention during March Madness that, they wanted to talk about college basketball and some other sports. And of course, I love the NFL in particular. So I'm going to ask you this question before I let you go, because I will certainly let people in the live chat and people that call serve up whatever sports memory. It doesn't have to be college basketball. So outside of Ohio State, what would be your most excruciating defeat as a sports fan?
I'm glad you brought that up, and we're going to share some more pain here, Mark. 1997, the Cleveland Indians against the Florida Marlins.
Oh, my word. Yeah.
Need I say more, Mark Rogers?
It's tough to distinguish or separate 97 and 16. I probably handled 16 much better, just being an older individual. No. Yeah, 1997. Yeah, that was rough.
The Cubs, it's tough to muster frustration towards the Cubs. I will still say that to this day. But they were just better than that Marlins team. And, man, just losing the lead in the ninth and Mesa blowing it. And I don't. By the way, Mark, one last thing before I let you go. You talked about sports memorabilia.
Yeah.
Somebody found a Sports Illustrated with Joe Carter and Corey Snyder on the cover from 1987.
The 1987 Sports Illustrated baseball preview.
Yes, one of the all-timers. And two of my all-time favorite Indians players.
Yes, where the Indians were predicted to win the World Series and lost 101 games that year.
Yeah, under the leadership of Pat Corrales, I believe.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Pat Corrales. Yeah. Yep.
Well, as always, a pleasure taking a trip down memory lane with you, Mark Rogers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate the call. Have a good night.
Take care.
And as we go through this, I will, unless I get bombarded with phone calls, and I want to acknowledge everybody's responses because I appreciate the feedback and I want to hear your stories in the live chat as well. I will share my most excruciating as well, which I don't know that there's a soul who will be able to guess my most excruciating defeat as a sports fan. All right, let's get to DeAndre. I want to hear what he has to say. It's the voice of college football. DeAndre,
hey, Mark,
what's going on? Yes, sir.
Man, how you doing today?
How you doing today? I'm good. I'm going to watch that Clemson spring game tomorrow.
I heard what you and Jason talked about. And I agree the offensive line is where people are looking at. Because if you go look at Clemson's last couple of recruit classes, they got a bunch of 4-stars in, the kid out of Raleigh, a guy out of Kentucky, and a guy out of Florida. I think he's going to be a sophomore this year, a freshman this year. They don't got a lot of people out for that interior offensive line position. So, yeah, that's where I think that we're going to see. And I love Dabo, and I love what he does. But I got to ask this. If I'm not mistaken, Mitch Hyatt was a top 5, not a top 5 recruit, but he was a 5-star recruit out of Ohio State. Cameron Jackson was a top 5 recruit out of Ohio. Now you got Lake coming in, and he was a 5-star. So my question is, you see all these 5-stars come in and left tackle, but none of them are high draft picks. So I wonder if the development of the offensive line is really not being done at Clemson because maybe the style of play. If you look back at Pollard, he came out of Southern Pines, which is here in North Carolina. He was a 4-star, and they moved him all around. The offensive line from right tackle to right guard to center. I mean, I just really wonder about the development of our offensive linemen. And my question is, with Lake coming in, who was a 5-star, I think he's like 6'5", 270, and then you will have this other guy, I can't remember his name, at left tackle possibly this year, that later come in, what's it called, earlier Rowley. I wonder, are they going to red shirt him, put some weight on him, and let him develop from there. Because that's the biggest problem. They got all the skilled players in the world. They got the defense, but if you don't get the offensive line right, we're going to end up like Florida State and Miami has in the last couple of years of falling down after you lose these great quarterbacks. So that's one position I think Clemson, maybe Dabo might need to do a coaching change, or maybe I think it's Robbie Anderson or Robert Coleman. Maybe he needs to go look at how some of the other teams are doing it around the country. And that really concerns me about Clemson's offensive line. Because, I don't care what anybody says about quarterback. Offensive line and defensive line is your first two most important positions. We see Trent Dilfer win the Super Bowl as a quarterback. And, I think Brad Johnson won one. I mean, you can have terrible quarterbacks that win Super Bowls. You don't want it always like that, but if you have a good running game and a good defense, a lot of times you still can win. You still can win a championship.
I don't know that Brad Johnson was an awful quarterback, but I'm not going to debate bad Super Bowl quarterbacks. There have been a few that have, especially in an earlier day and age, like a David Woodley taking the Dolphins to the Super Bowl and completing all of 4 passes in the Super Bowl. That was possible at one point. But anyway, I'll take my stab at the Clemson offensive line situation. Number one, I don't believe that the offensive line recruiting was as good as quickly as the other units on both sides of the ball. So while Dabo built this dynasty, the offensive line recruiting wasn't quite as good as the other position units on the field, offense and defense initially. Now, to your point, it has basically caught up in the last few years, so it should be much better. My next thought would be, though Dabo's not responsible for the offensive line, you do have an offensive line coach. I don't know the gentleman's name. You mentioned him, but if he's needing to go around the country and pick up tips and advice and techniques and approaches from other coaches, I don't think he's the guy to be the offensive line coach at Clemson. So they obviously haven't developed the offensive line, and that's been an issue. So if it continues to be, I don't know where to rate their offensive line exactly, but it's not a top 5 unit in the country. It's not even close to that. It's more like a top 25 unit. And when the rest of the team is a top 2 or 3 program in the country, then that's obviously the sore spot.
Well, and that's what I mean. If you go back to Trevor Lawrence's the year they lost to LSU, which would have been the sophomore year, their whole offensive line was outside of Carmen Jackson was, had been with Deshaun Watson since they were freshmen and sophomores. So they came up through the ranks, and they got drafted. Simpson, I can't pronounce the other guy, Akamaku or whatever the name is. Pollard didn't get drafted. And I don't know who else didn't get drafted, but Carmen Jackson was going to get drafted. So he had a pretty decent offensive line. So Carmen Jackson was a 5-star. He was a freshman. He got to learn behind Hyatt. So you got the. So he did learn a little bit, but my point is they won't dominate. I mean, I don't get me wrong. Clemson has great receivers, and you can spread out, you can scheme, but you just like when you watch Alabama play. Alabama, they're smashing people. And Clemson, all it is a power run just with a spread. So I just wonder, I don't know if the blocking scheme or not. I know you said, well, you got to go around the country and maybe look at what some other people do. But if you remember when Dabo first started off.
I said, don't do that.
They brought Champ. But no, I'm about to I'm going to explain. You should say you shouldn't do it. But you remember with But wait a minute, just listen to me for a second. Remember when who's the coach that was at Nevada? He came up with the pistol formation.
Oh,
Chad Morrison went out there. I can't remember the name, but Chad Morrison went out there and studied on him a little bit over the summer. They invite coaches in, and they do watch what other coaches do.
Yes.
They might get some tips and stuff. I'm not saying that you should have to, but maybe in that case, let me see what you're doing differently, because they do study from each other. That's what I mean. I know what you mean. I apologize if I misquoted you.
No, you
But yeah,
didn't
that's what I
misquote
mean.
me.
You know,
I wasn't clear, and I didn't explain myself. I just threw out a comment and left it right there. What I meant to say is that yes, you're absolutely right. There are coaches from all over the country, assistant coaches and head coaches that go all over the country, go to different clinics. That I am totally for in regards to picking up coaching techniques and instructions and different schemes and in different ways to teach players and all that. You should have a coaching staff that wants to go out there and soak all that up. But I meant it more from the standpoint, if you really think that your offensive line coach needs to go out there and like learn how to be an offensive line coach at this level, then he's not the right guy at Clemson. Like that's not the place to do that and have that kind of that level of a coach.
Right. I mean, I can't tell you the last time Clemson had a top 50 offensive lineman took in, you know, in the first 2 rounds. I can't tell you the last time Clemson had that compared to Alabama and Ohio State. Even look at Boston College. They always turning out good offensive linemen and stuff like that. You know, but as far as that go, yeah, that's why I had one to comment, but y'all did a great job, you and Jason, man. I just want to make sure we had that understanding.
Appreciate that, DeAndre.
So, you know,
I'm going to take in the game tomorrow, and I'm going to go live right after the Clemson spring game.
Oh, yeah, I'll be watching. I think it's at 10 o'clock?
It's a 1 p.m.
Or 12.
1 o'clock.
1 p.m.? Oh, yeah, I won't be doing that tomorrow. So, yeah, I'll be watching. Yeah, I'm about to ask you. So you said the best sport memories, huh? Most saddest?
You know, basically,
Sports
you know,
memories?
what games do you still look back upon and with a fond memory that has just gotten you more excited and more juiced up and than any other? And then on the flip side, what still stings? What are those games that still sting?
Wow. Well, I started. I was in the '80s. I really wasn't a big college basketball fan, but in the '90s, when UNLV came around, and you got to see them on TV, that pressure style, them getting out of ducking, boy, that really excited me watching them play. But what are my saddest moments dealing with them is when they lost to Duke the second time around, you know, by 2, and they lost that game. You know, as we gotten older, you know, some people said they might have been betting and they threw the game or something like that. But hey, you know, it is what it is. Michigan, Colorado always sticks out. A bunch of those Notre Dame, Michigan games in the '80s. Miami, Notre Dame, Clemson, Duke. I think you talk about that all the time when Clemson had just beat somebody really, really good, and all they had to do was beat Duke when Steve Spurrier was coaching. Duke was like 0-3, Clemson was like 4-0, and Clemson had Virginia the next week, and that was '89. I thought they could have won the championship, and all you remember is that big white fullback dragging Kirkland and like several others into the end zone. And you're like, man, this defense is that good, and these white guys end up, you know, trucking all of them. LeVar Kirkland was a monster. I mean, that stands out. Alabama versus Clemson the first time with Deshaun Watson. I felt like, you know, Deshaun Watson put on the show. You know, I always felt that first team with Tankersley and Alexander at the quarterback positions, you know, they got banged up a lot. But I always felt that first time Clemson definitely should have beat Alabama. And I thought they should have lost the second time, but Deshaun Watson is putting on performance in both of those games. One of my favorite football players of all time is Walter Payton, and him losing to the damn Redskins his last game in the playoffs, that still hurts my heart to this day. And I think that's how Barry Sanders went out too, losing to the Redskins in the playoffs. That was his last game. I can't really remember, but that one always stands out. And Steelers losing to the Packers in the Super Bowl, that one always hurts. So, and not that I hate the Packers, but it's just the fact that they had lost that Super Bowl, and Mendenhall letting the ball fumble all the way down the field and not trying to grab it. And that still hurts me to this day. And losing to the Cowgirls. So, yeah, I have a lot of sports, especially about football, man. I love football, college and pro.
All right,
Yeah,
DeAndre.
so, you know. All right, Mark, you take it easy, man.
You too. Appreciate the call. All right, let's get to Dominic here because Dominic is a big 76ers fan, as is stated in the live chat. So I'm guessing, I'm going to take a guess before we bring in Dominic, that Dominic's most excruciating losses had to be those Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale teams that knocked out the 76ers time and time again in the Eastern Conference Finals. You know, Dr. J, Daryl Dawkins, Mo Cheeks, Andrew Toney, Bobby Jones. It's got to be the answer. Got to be the answer. All right. Dominic, how we doing tonight? Did you hear my comment about the 76ers? I made a guess on your most excruciating losses.
Actually, I said something about my most exhilarating win in the live stream chat.
Most exhilarating win was what?
The Washington Nationals 2019 MLB World Series champions.
Oh,
that
okay.
was my most exhilarating win. We beat the Astros in Game 7.
I saw it. Yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. But my most exhilarating loss was when the Capitals ended up being eliminated in the second round to the Penguins in the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Pens went all the way to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I got nothing for you there.
Yeah, I figured that.
Yeah, when I went to work at ESPN, I was introduced to the NHL. That was really the first time I was kind of forced to watch the NHL. And because I had a job in which I had to keep track of the games and so forth and run some of the traffic during the games and so forth. And at that point, ESPN actually had the NHL. This was in the early 2000s. So it's an exciting sport. I have all the respect in the world for NHL players. They're tough. They're skilled. A Game 7 of an NHL playoff series is phenomenal. I agree to all that. I just don't have any interest in following it. All right, Dominic.
Yeah, speaking of NHL on ESPN,
sure.
Speaking of NHL on ESPN, NHL is actually bringing ESPN back for a 7-year deal. This fall. It's not a joke. I'm serious.
Yeah, you missed April Fool's Day by one day, Dominic.
Yeah. Yeah, but...
Well, we'll all be looking forward to seeing the NHL on ESPN this fall. That will be phenomenal. All right, Dominic, anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. You have a good night. Have a good call-in show.
You too. Appreciate it. All right, next up, who do we got here? Let me get real quick to, before we move on to, I think we've got Dennis there. Let me I want to see some of these responses that we've got. We got here by John Milley, 1975. Exhilarating win was the 93 Sugar Bowl against Miami. So we're talking an Alabama fan, of course, here, winning the national championship, and another one against Georgia on the 2nd and 26, Tua to Devontae. And the most painful loss, without saying, goes without saying. Does it really go without saying? I understand the kick 6 was historic, but it goes without saying. Andrew, as an Oklahoma fan, most excruciating loss was the 18 Rose Bowl game against Georgia. Big lead in that one. Baker Mayfield tearing it up early. And then that Georgia running game kicked it in for double overtime loss there. Yes. Mark is letting us know worst games. Ohio State Michigan under Cooper. Kevin, Detroit Lions, worst organization in sports. That certainly could be argued. They're up there. BGPO Football Funk. DeAndre, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. There've got to be a couple other ones, I think, down the line. So we appreciate everybody and your individual contributions. Mike is letting us know the lowest score of all time, 3-0. I believe it's actually 0-0 would be the lowest scoring college football game of all time. The lowest scoring NFL game. I know there was a Chiefs Buccaneers game back in 1983 that was 3-0. It was played in the rain down in Tampa. Hey, Cheryl, good to see you. Joey, I'm still crying because we didn't leave something in the Rose Bowl to play Nebraska that year for the Natty. They really got robbed, but what can you do? At least you got us in 88. I'm not following that. Somebody got robbed in the Rose Bowl to play Nebraska. Anyway. All right. Falcon ERX. Falcon, thank you so much for your contributions here. So much appreciated. Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Falcon ERX. Most excruciating loss, the national championship game, Miami, Ohio State. Glad I sold my tickets to an Ohio State friend. Yes, that was a tough one. And one more before we go to the phone lines. We got D-Rock Irish, Boston College upset win over Notre Dame in 1993. Agree with Mark. Irish lost to a solid number 17 Boston College team. I wonder if the final outcome would have made a difference if Notre Dame lost at BC. All I know, D-Rock Irish, is that Notre Dame should have been voted the national champion in 1993. I don't even see any argument in it. You got two teams that play exceptional schedules, Notre Dame and Florida State. They both have one loss. They played. Isn't this the reason we actually play the games? This is the reason we play the games, to determine, oh, that team won, so we need to give them a better standing than the other team. Regardless of what we think, there's all sorts of games being played every week where I'm like, well, they beat them, but I still think them are better than they are. But that doesn't mean I get to say, you know what? Let's rank them number 1. We'll rank them like number 8 because I just like them better. I just think they're better. Most idiotic. It's just, it's so stupid. And I have no dog in the fight. 0. But we've got two teams that played in a particular season, and we give a national championship to the team that lost to the other team. All right, let's get on to Dennis, I believe we've got coming up here at the Voice of College Football. Some comments on the quarterback competition somewhere. Hello, Dennis.
Hey, Marcus. Hey, Marcus. MSU number 1 fan.
MSU number 1 fan. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
It says Dennis here. That was probably MSU number 1 fan voice recognition converted it to Dennis. MSU number 1 fan.
Okay.
You want to talk about your Sparty quarterback competition?
Yep. Lombardi's gone to Northern Illinois.
Yes, he has. See if he can duplicate his Michigan performance up there.
Yeah, it was awful for him to.
Well, his
He's a
Michigan
good
performance was good. That's what I'm saying. If he could take his Michigan game, 320 yards passing, and take that to NIU with him.
Yeah. Peyton Thorne's a quarterback to keep your eye on for next season.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Peyton Thorne is a guy to keep an eye on next season.
When is the Michigan State spring game?
April 24th.
April 24th. Well, I will take in the game and give you some kind of an evaluation based on that, which doesn't mean a whole lot, but it's one game, a scrimmage. Shouldn't even call it a game. But as it stands right now, Anthony Russo is the guy with the experience.
Yeah. And Peyton Thorne has a game and a half under his belt as well. When Lombardi went down with a head injury against Ohio State. And what are your thoughts on firing coaches after 2020?
I'm sorry, what are you looking for?
What are your thoughts on firing coaches after 2020?
I did say a number of times early in the 2020 season that I expected administrations to basically give these coaches a pass for 2020. That wasn't the case at Vanderbilt, South Carolina. Who else fired coaches? Kansas is a different deal. That's Les Miles being Les Miles. But South Carolina, Vanderbilt, of course, Tennessee, another different situation because we had off-field issues connected to Jeremy Pruitt's ouster.
Texas.
Well, yeah. Tom Herman was on a high wire act his entire time. He won a lot of close games, lost a lot of close games. I don't necessarily think that any of those firings weren't justified.
Me and Ballard Sports Media talked about this yesterday on his channel. We said you should not fire coaches after 2020.
Okay. I can respect that opinion, but if I'm South Carolina and I've sat through 3 consecutive losing seasons under Will Muschamp, and he goes 2-8, everybody played under the same conditions. So it's not like now, if some coach would have gone 1-3 in the Pac-12 and got fired after 4 games, the Pac-12 season was really compromised. But again, Will Muschamp topped out at 9-4 in 2017. That's when he was at the peak of his tenure at South Carolina. The next year, they crawled to the finish line, got shut out by 4 touchdowns in a bowl game, and then it was all downhill after that. 4-8. So had the 2-8 Will Muschamp season come after successful seasons, I would have said absolutely not. Should he take the brunt of that? But the train was clearly headed downhill and off the tracks at South Carolina. And I never thought Derek Mason did a good job at Vanderbilt anyway. He's been there for 7 years, plenty of time to show whether he could win anything at Vanderbilt. Never did. Should have been fired. I have no issue with those firings. I did, however, say throughout the season that I had anticipated that administrations would be reluctant to fire coaches. Gus Malzahn got fired. There's another one. Gus Malzahn at Auburn, of course.
Yeah. My most exhilarating win would be the 2015 Michigan State-Michigan football game.
The 2016 game? 2015. Yes.
Yeah.
The muffed punt game.
Yeah. How does a punter do that?
Do you know who else that was an excruciating loss for?
Michigan.
Well, besides Michigan, I'm sorry. Besides Michigan, MSU #1 fan. Do you know what team was most affected by that game? Besides Michigan State, of course.
I would say my most exhilarating loss would be the 2015 Nebraska game.
Okay.
That Nebraska game, thanks to the referees.
All right, so we've got our best win was the Michigan win in 2015 and the Nebraska loss, the most excruciating loss to a 5-7 Nebraska team that year.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it was something with the receiver stepped out of bounds, but he wasn't forced out or something like that.
Yeah, I don't recall that play. I remember that game. I think he lost like 27-23.
We lost that 39-38.
Okay. All right, MSU number one fan. Have a great
Yep.
night.
Thank you too.
MSU number one fan didn't want to answer my question about what team was most impacted by that Michigan State win over Michigan. All right, college football. Jared, I believe, is who we're going to talk to next. Hopefully, we got that right. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's college football Jared. How you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. What's going on?
Doing well. First, what team was most affected by that Michigan State Michigan game?
Yes, that was my question. So, you know what game I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, of course, if Michigan State had lost that game, as it appeared as though they were, regardless of their win against Ohio State would have went to the Big Ten championship game, been a heavy favorite, and most likely would have went to the college football playoff.
I figured.
So what's on your mind?
All right. Most excruciating win and loss. As an Alabama fan, there's been a couple. We'll start off with the losses. Definitely the kick six game. That game was excruciating because, that was like back then, like the year before, we had been shredded by, Johnny Manziel, and then he shredded us again, but we actually won the next year. That same year, I believe, was the year of the kick six, and we got shredded again by Nick Marshall. And so at that point, mobile QBs were really just giving me nightmares, especially because just we could not handle them. And that game was so back and forth, and finally thinking that we might win it, with going down, down the field, when I thought we would just probably go to overtime. Then, oh shoot, we're already at midfield. Let's kick a field goal, and of course, in true Auburn fashion, a miracle play, and Chris Davis returns it all the way. And I mean, for me, like, I've been spoiled, as an Alabama fan. Like, basically, grown up in the Nick Saban era, so although I was technically alive, like, before Saban, I don't remember much. So, winning has just, at Alabama has just been like everything for me because, that's just all I can remember. And so that was like the first time that I was just like, I completely lost it, man, because I was so spoiled, seeing us win and make it far every year. And of course, we still, played Oklahoma that year in the Sugar Bowl, I believe it was, and of course lost. But yeah, I wanted to break the TV. I was crying so hard. Gosh darn Auburn. So that was really a gut punch for me and my dad. That was the first time I saw him cry after that game.
Well, I'll say, Jared, that that's a great story. That even though Auburn gave Florida State a great championship game, that I would have loved to have watched Alabama play Florida State in the BCS championship game.
Oh yeah, especially with Winston being from Birmingham, I believe it is. That would have been definitely fun to watch. I also got to go with the year we lost the last play versus Clemson. That was horrible because, of course, another mobile quarterback just obliterating Alabama, and we had such a great defense that year. I mean, that was probably one of my most favorite defenses. We had, so many dudes on there like Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Tim Williams, Minka Fitzpatrick, just a bunch of guys. And then, Jalen Hurts, he played great that game. Well, not great, but he did decent. And, he left the field, with the lead, but we could not convert anything on third down that game. I remember distinctly because just Hurts was not a good passer. I believe he regressed a bit his sophomore year, but even freshman year, he was was not great, and he's more of just a runner. And Renfro. I mean, like the last drive with Clemson there at the end, I just knew we were going to lose because I mean, at that time, Deshaun Watson was like just doing whatever he wanted, even with our defense being so amazing. They were just driving down the field, converting to Mike Williams. Hunter Renfro always giving Alabama fits. And there was a couple pass interferences that they were at 20, and then all of a sudden they're at the 1 with like 1 second left, and boom. That was terrible for me as a fan because that was like I was so hyped for that game because I wanted to go back to back versus Clemson. I mean I've grown to like Dabo a lot more now, but I hated Dabo back then. So that really poured a lot of salt in the wound to lose to him.
Yeah, I at the time was making the same comment that offseason that you just made about Jalen Hurts. He did not play a great game. He went 13 for 31, but of course, he's also a mobile quarterback that made a lot of plays with his legs, and that he left the field twice in the fourth quarter with the lead and walked off the field, as you just mentioned, the last time with the lead. So he did what he could in the fourth quarter and handed it to his defense, and which we all thought was one of the greatest defenses we'd ever seen. And that was a great championship game. That was one of the better championship games, not just from the standpoint of the drama at the end, but knowing that those teams were just loaded.
Yeah. There were so many first-round picks on both of those sides of the ball. That is just crazy. Both those games versus Clemson and those back-to-back years were really great. I got to go to I'll go to my exhilarating wins now. I got to go to that game, the one we won versus Clemson in 2015. Well, I believe, the 2015 season. It took place in 2016, though. I got to go to that game. That was so much fun. But I've never been that, I've been to a few Alabama games, but never anything of that magnitude. I've never been that nervous in my life. Just sitting there and watching the game go back and forth. Ultimately, we won, which was, of course, real nice. But that was a lot of fun. And then I got to go with second and 26. What's crazy about that game is I couldn't go watch the game with my dad because he was living like 45 minutes away, and so at my mom's place we didn't have cable, and so I was just watching on my 4-inch screen on my iPhone, and buffering every 30 seconds. It was like 5 minutes delayed, but in the first half, we were down 13-0 at the end of the first half, and that was it for me with Jalen Hurts. You already knew he wasn't a good passer, but you couldn't win with him. It was fairly obvious. And I thought, they would take out Hurts, at the Auburn game that year that we lost. Because, couldn't do anything there. When we played a really good defense, Hurts just, shriveled up and showed that, he can't really pass the ball. So bringing Tua in, and ultimately winning versus Georgia, who has become a bit of a rivalry for me now. That was real nice. Of course, on the last play with Devontae Smith. But games like that, it's so crazy to remember. Just watching it was me and my brother watching on a 4-inch screen, with lag every 5 seconds. But that's what you live for with college football.
Very cool, Jared. We appreciate those memories. You have a great night, and call back sometime.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it, what you do.
Okay, Jared, Alabama fan with some memories that I'm sure we've all had. When you talk Alabama football, then you're talking typically championship games. So everyone was on board for those. We got Kevin coming in here from Dallas, Georgia to talk, Ohio State and Miami and some other epic moments in college football. Kevin, how you doing tonight?
Great. Good evening, Mark. How you doing this evening?
I'm good.
I just have to piggyback the previous caller because I just want you to know as far as second and 26 is not referred to as second and 26 in Alabama. It's considered February the 26th, so it's a national holiday as far as the state of Alabama. But as far as but that was one of those, I guess you can, as far as an Alabama fan can truly say it's a real moment because okay, the play prior, Tua gets set, and then okay, my wife is thinking just get a first down, and I'm thinking okay, along the same lines, just get a first down. And he went back to pass Mark, and then the ball, it was as though he was Charlie Brown, and he threw the ball as far as he could. And Devontae Smith was as though mom and saying, okay, boy, you better be in here before the street lights come on. And he ran as fast as he could. And lo and behold, it wound up being in stride. Next thing you know, hey, it was Bedlam in his home. And I mean, and the blessing, and the one fortunate thing about it, Mark, is that my wife and I were in education. So we had, as far as on that particular evening, it snowed in Atlanta. So we were already off on Tuesday anyway, and it would have been hard for me to function having been so geeked up, for lack of a better way to say it, 2 to 3 that morning as far as Tuesday. So I would not have been the best professional that day, but that's another story for another time. Because we didn't have to deal with that because we were off. Going back to the kick six, and I would say that, Mark, it seems as far as that game that was the first time that Coach Saban, although he was the smartest man in the room, that he should not have displayed how bright he was. Because I think he overthought the situation. He should have just simply punted the ball, Mark, and just say, go to overtime and that's it. But trying to kick a field goal from doggone Tuscaloosa to Auburn, I don't think he should have done that. And because at the time, I mean, we really didn't have as far as how we've looked at kickers other than the previous kicker we've had, because we really haven't had a place kicker in almost 4 years. The 2020, 2021, the 2020 season notwithstanding. And as far as the most excruciating loss, it wouldn't be an Alabama game per se, but I would have to go back to the Miami-Ohio State game, but it was more so as in a gruesome injury, Mark. And it was as far as the Willis McGahee injury. Because I would think that as far as lower extremities are concerned, only 2 gruesome injuries that I can really recall in my life would have been Joe Theismann against the Giants, as well as the Willis McGahee injury. I was wondering, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, in terms of actually what it looked like on television, yeah, the Theismann injury and the McGahee were 2 that stand out because, yes, you see the leg. It was so graphic in which the leg bent that you knew that this was severe. I know that there were a couple basketball injuries, and because you don't have the clutter of players and the uniform to deal with and all that, they just wear shorts. That a couple basketball injuries come to mind. I don't remember the players involved. That it was obvious that somebody broke a leg or whatever. But yeah, other football injuries that were obvious to that extent. I know there should be a long list of them come to mind, but they're not presently. I'm even thinking of the Alex Smith injury a couple of years ago in the NFL that turned out to be just a horrific injury that he made just a monumental comeback from. But in terms of just watching it, it didn't look that horrible. Yeah, I'm not. The Theismann injury always comes to mind anytime if somebody says horrible injury, because it was Monday Night Football, and of course he was a big time quarterback, and Lawrence Taylor was Lawrence Taylor, one of the greatest of all time, and there was a movie made out of it, the whole deal. Not necessarily that, but Blindside was the whole concept of the left tackle becoming the highest paid player on the field aside from the quarterback. Yeah, I'm not. I'm sure people in the live chat will refresh my memory to other incidents that were gruesome on the field, but I'm not coming up with them. I witnessed one in person one time. I remember actually on the field that somebody shattered his forearm, and it looked pretty bad. It was about 5 feet from me.
Wow. And Mark wanted to shoot this at you in regards to a Mount Rushmore at a college in 3 different sports. and I was wondering whether you could find another Mount Rushmore that could compare. And that would be, as far as on the collegiate level, football, basketball, and baseball. And I have to, take my hat off as far as the Caltech, or as we call them, or as you would call them, Auburn, as in Charles Barkley as far as basketball, Frank Thomas in baseball, and Bo Jackson as far as football.
Sure.
And I was wondering whether there were three institutions that would, I'm not going to even say compare, but whether any institution has three guys that's on that Mount Rushmore.
And that's an intriguing and entertaining documentary that ESPN put together that airs quite frequently, and I've seen it many times on the SEC network. I don't know that you've ever, if you've seen it, but they have a documentary where it's because those three were on campus at the same time and they became good friends. And I don't know if ESPN just lucked into this or what, but they were attending the Kick Six game for a reunion, those three. And then it just fell into place. The story just fell into place, besides their friendship and their reunion and them being representing the three major sports in the country, coming from the same university at the same time, that they were there for this reunion, and then they witnessed the Kick Six. So it's a pretty good documentary. Well, what makes that question difficult is the baseball end of it, because unless you're a diehard college baseball fan, I followed baseball as closely as I will argue anybody on the planet for 25, 30, 35 years. And I wasn't really locked in on where they went to college, because I didn't follow college baseball until, actually, ironically, I went to the SEC and covered football, and baseball's big down there. And I was indoctrinated into SEC baseball and saw a lot of good players down there. So, Roger Clemens went to Texas, so I would think we would come up with a Texas football and basketball. You would have Roger Clemens, Kevin Durant, and it's, I guess, Earl Campbell. Is he the greatest Texas football player of all time? Vince Young, Earl Campbell. At the collegiate level, it might be Vince Young, but all time at both levels, it would be Earl Campbell above Ricky Williams. Who else is in there? But anyway, so maybe it's Earl Campbell, Roger Clemens, Kevin Durant is the best I can do at Texas. Really, you can't go north of the Mason-Dixon line for many. Obviously, they're, through the years, were great baseball players all over the place, but it's more of a Southern-dominated sport. It's a great question. I instantly thought, because I went to baseball first because I knew that would be the toughest to come up with. And I thought Arizona State produced Barry Bonds and Reggie Jackson, but I'm not coming up with their equivalents in football and basketball. Wow, that's USC. Oh, there you go. This could be but the problem is basketball. I don't know enough about.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to go
USC
as far as the basketball.
But USC baseball, I know, produced Tom Seaver, comes to mind right out of the gate. And I know that they produced more than that at USC, their baseball program. And of course, football, you could make all sorts of selections. OJ. And if you're going to stay collegiately, Marcus Allen, well, he can go to the NFL as well, obviously, as one of the all-time greats. And Charles White, I don't know. I think you go OJ myself, regardless of what happened afterwards. I know people don't like to bring up the name, and I think he gets unfairly, and I'm just speaking in football terms here, people don't go crazy. He's unfairly not brought up or placed as highly on lists anymore. Just strictly talking about football, he was just phenomenal. Oh my goodness, he was phenomenal. Anyway, OJ, Tom Seaver, and I can't come with a basketball player. It's I'm sure that there are better examples out there and better trifectas than what I'm coming up with. But because, again, I'm not much of a. I know college basketball. I followed it for a long time and followed it closely from the late 70s into the 2000s, but I'm not any kind of historian when it comes to college basketball. And then college baseball, again, it's just whoever I remember knowing and where they went to college. But yeah, that's a difficult Mount Rushmore to beat. Let me look in the so before we let you go, Kevin, we got Joey Foster. Thank you so much for the super chats. I'll get back to them in just a second, acknowledging Joey, because I wanted to get to see if anybody threw out any trifectas here, and I'm not seeing anybody that's really throwing anything out there. Football, baseball, basketball. North Carolina, Julius Peppers, MJ. Yeah, you got to come up with a baseball player. See, I don't think anybody's going to be. Yeah, I think I did better than the chat here. I'm not seeing anybody with a football, baseball, basketball threesome to even come close. So I'm going to go Earl Campbell, Roger Clemens, and Kevin Durant as close as I can come.
I agree, and I would say that as far as whoever will come up with a trifecta, Mark, it'll have to be a Southern team, because the one thing that you find as far as with the other 40 plus states is that you're going to have to deal with guys that would have gone collegiately, but hey, when they came out of high school, the money was too great to turn down, so they decided as far as to take the money and run.
Yeah, for as great as the football is in the South, dominated in the South and California, baseball is even more so a Southern sport. Stanford, now somebody can come up with a Stanford basketball player for me, but it's because you got all sorts of quarterback opportunities, and of course John Elway would be the guy, and then you would have. I thought I came up with a great Stanford baseball player. Now I lost him. Shoot.
Well, would it have been doggone John Elway?
Well, yeah, but he didn't do anything in the big league. So yeah, but oh, that's right. You're just talking collegiately. That's a good point. But yeah, the Auburn 3 there. Yeah, that's
always Mark
tough to beat. Thank you, Kevin.
Well, thank you very much. Hey, you take and have a good evening, Mark.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's make our way through. Joey Foster again. So, Joey, regular season win beat Texas 2018. Well, I don't know. I don't know who you root for, Joey. A lot of teams beat Texas in 2018. I think 4 of them. But you also had a super chat coming in, so we appreciate that, Joey. Thank you so much for that. I want to catch your other comment if I can get back to it. Something about Nebraska. Nebraska was the best in 93. Then W, then Notre Dame. W meaning Washington. W. Oh, West Virginia. I'm sorry. I need the contacts in. West Virginia in 93. West Virginia. Wasn't that the year that Florida just completely tore them to shreds in the Sugar Bowl? 93. Yeah, so that Nebraska team, unfortunately for them, they played a stellar game against Florida State in the Orange Bowl. And that's another reason why I feel as though that Florida State National Championship Award is what I call it. They didn't necessarily win it. They were awarded the national championship, just like everybody else year to year back in those days. Was a bit tainted because that was a shaky win. 18-16, Nebraska missed a field goal, a long one, but still a field goal from about 50 at the gun. Didn't even come close. But so if Florida State would have gone out there on New Year's night in the Orange Bowl and just laid waste at Nebraska, then okay, I can understand a little bit better. But they squeaked by. All right. Exhilarating wins and excruciating losses. The topic here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football tonight. And we will talk about anything in college football. Of course. What do we have here from Sue? Mark, what college football team do you root for every week, and why is it Ohio State? Go Bucks. Ha ha ha. So it's the Buckeyes because that's where I grew up. That's the easiest way to answer that. I just never considered, it just came natural. It wasn't, did any of you make I have talked to many people who it seems like they consciously, like their head, they made a choice of who they were going to root for in different sports in their head. They like sat there and said, well, this team has A, B, and C. This team has A, B, and C, and they have, and I guess I'm going to root for the Los Angeles Lakers. Okay. Now in baseball, okay, I'm going to root for, and it was like this conscious decision. There was never a conscious decision of who to root for. It was all heart. It was, who did my heart pull me toward? And I still have yet to answer my own question about most excruciating loss. Exhilarating win. Yeah, but excruciating loss. There have been many, but there's one that stands out above the rest. All right. Got Joey Foster chiming in here. Love to hear from you, Joey. Thanks for calling.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, what's going on tonight?
I wanted to call in. I've never called into your show before, but we was talking about the '93 season earlier and Notre Dame being the best, and I agree they were really good. They lost to Boston College in the '93 regular season. They were ranked number 1. Boston College was ranked 17th, I believe.
Yes.
They lost to Boston College. The following week, West Virginia was ranked number 3, and they beat Boston College, which moved into number 2, and Nebraska to number 1. And what I was saying was my most disappointing season in general was that year West Virginia did not get to play Nebraska for the national championship because there was no tie-in with the Rose Bowl.
The Orange Bowl. Sure. Yeah.
So that's all I was saying, is there was no tie-in with the Rose Bowl for West Virginia. So West Virginia went on and played in the Sugar Bowl, and you're right, got blown away by Florida. But it was a game they didn't even want to be in. They really wanted to play, the national championship against Nebraska. They felt like they should have played it.
So Joey, I love the way you're approaching this. I love the way you're approaching this because, I took in the whole season and just, stated exactly what happened to the finish. But to your point, the only thing that matters in discussing who should have played whom was where did it line up after the regular season? And yes, West Virginia was an undefeated football team. So was Nebraska. And therefore, why did they not play? Well, Florida State, being Florida State at the time, had established themselves as a power. And even though they had the one loss, and they were invited by the Orange Bowl to go play in the Orange Bowl. But you're right. It should have been Nebraska and West Virginia.
Okay. No, Rock Irish and I were talking in the chat about that year too, and that's what was bringing all that up. Was we was talking about that inside the chat and the Notre Dame West Virginia game in '88 for the national championship. And I was talking on my super chat about the 2018 regular season game against Texas was the most exhilarating for me. I mean, because it came down to the final second. Will Greer threw a pass to Jennings in the end zone.
Yeah.
And it was just a great game. So
I apologize.
That's all I had for you, Mark.
Well, I apologize because when I read your super chats, I didn't know who you rooted for, so I didn't know we were talking about West Virginia, and all I saw was 2018 we beat Texas, and all I knew was, okay, well, Texas lost 4 games. Who are we talking about? Oh yeah, that Will Greer, beautiful pass right at the back end line. I forget who caught it. You remember who caught that?
Jennings.
Yeah. Okay.
Jennings.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was like I won't try to come up with a score. Whatever the score was, yeah, it was a great game. I remember that game very well. Yeah, that was a thrilling game. Yep. Absolutely. All right, good stuff. Thank you so much, Joey.
That's all I had.
Thanks so much for calling. Thanks, appreciate Mark.
That. Bye-bye.
All right. I love to hear from fan bases. For as much as I love all of you, of course, don't get me wrong. Please don't get me wrong. But I love to hear from fans other than Ohio State, Michigan, Miami, Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson, Alabama. Love to hear West Virginia fans, Maryland fans, Purdue fans. Got a Virginia Tech fan in here. Love to hear from those folks as well. All right, so we've got most exhilarating wins and losses. I'm going exhilarating on the win side and excruciating on the loss side. Just my own adjectives there. Welcome to the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, Reasonable Gump here. What's going on, man?
I'm doing just fine. What's going on?
Well, I actually thought I'd call in and address something you asked a couple moments ago. You asked if there's any people who actually had to choose a team rather than just being born into it. So it's not uncommon in the state of Alabama to have what we call divided households. Because we have 2 major college programs, it's pretty common to have a married couple where one is an Auburn fan and the other is an Alabama fan.
And you're telling me that Akron University is not a major football program?
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
Okay. Akron, Kent, Miami of Ohio, Bowling Green. There's a lot to choose from there in Ohio.
Yeah. I'm sure that was
a difficult choice
for you.
Yes.
But anyway, no. I mean, I remember I was 5 or 6 years old, and this was back when track suits were popular and not just an old man kind of type of thing. And I actually had a full crimson one, an Alabama one, and a full-on blue and orange one for Auburn. Because I hadn't made a choice yet. And I remember my choice hinged on, again, keep in mind, I'm like 7 years old when I did this, but my choice happened when I asked my dad who would win in a fight between an elephant and a tiger. Back then, of course, I'm thinking a tiger would win, but he just corrected that easily. He's like, no, an elephant would destroy a tiger. And that's pretty much how I made my choice. And on hindsight, it was a pretty good choice.
Yeah, well done by you. So not to give away your age, but if you'd like to, at 7 years old, where are we in the history of this series at this point?
We are, 7, we're in kind of the early to mid 90s. So it's kind of back and forth, but it's starting to kind of slightly start to swing towards Auburn. And it ain't good, got to the disaster of the 2000s, but, Alabama won a couple SEC titles, actually just won a national title. So Alabama's still looking stronger at that point, but dark times were about to come.
Yes, they were.
Which speaks to which leads right into your topic. One of the most exhilarating wins. Again, I was really young then. I couldn't really appreciate it for what it was, but I know for certain that a lot of older Alabama fans would tell you the 1993 Sugar Bowl was probably one of their most exhilarating wins because of the lead up to it, because basically no one gave Alabama a chance that time. Everyone thinks Miami is basically an NFL team, and then of course the way Miami players held themselves and how they spoke about their opponents, how that washout doofus Lamar Thomas tried to make light of the manliness of the Alabama secondary, and then just to watch George Teague just run his ass down and literally steal the ball from him like in basketball, and just a very cocky, arrogant, good for nothing team to the point where no one even remembers them hardly anymore. That's got to be one of the most satisfying wins in Alabama history. And if I remember correctly, that quarterback of theirs, Gino Torretta, I think his name was, caused a lot of people to even question whether or not he deserved the Heisman at all after that performance.
I thought you were joking there
sure
for a second when you were
game
trying to come up with his name. When you were trying to come up with his name, that's the first thing I was going to enlighten you to, was that this gentleman won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, I'm aware, but I do remember it being a question afterwards. Wait, did we vote for the wrong guy? After that,
yeah,
I'm not saying that's a unique case. That happens a lot of times. Heisman's are busted.
It does, and I always
you know
thought
what
it
I'm
was
talking about.
Oh, absolutely,
This was before social media. This was before social media. This was before Twitter trolls and YouTube and all that. To have something like that happen, to have that utter domination of a team that everyone and their mother had picked to win by 20 points. That didn't happen that often.
No, and first of all, I was heavily rooting for Alabama, which at most times I would have had no interest. I would have watched the game every play because I loved college football, but could have cared less who won the game. But just because of everything you just outlined, that I could not do a better job in describing in the lead up to the game, was the sole reason why I rooted for Alabama to win that game, and was happy to see Miami get it, shoved in their faces. But yeah, Gino, even at a young age, I wasn't that young then, but at different times when that Heisman flack would come up for the winner who did not perform well in postseason play, I would always throw up my hands and say, it's a regular season award. This doesn't have anything to do with it. Why are people getting all uptight?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Gino Torretta, Alabama. Yeah, that was quite the game. It was 3 years earlier that Miami beat Alabama at the Sugar Bowl to claim one of its national championships.
Right.
But yeah, that was quite unexpected.
But yeah, I'm going to list that one just for other memory's sake. Really, not really. It's not that much farther back, but it's farther back than I can form memories of. But I'm sure a lot of Alabama fans may tell you 1986 against Notre Dame is the first win we had against Notre Dame. And it was a pretty sound victory. Of course, it was followed by a loss the very next year, but a lot of people would probably tell you that one. There's probably, actually, I was just about to say there's probably a few Iron Bowls, but I don't think there's very many Iron Bowls at all that Alabama fans would list as the most exhilarating win. Because to be honest, we don't usually win the really big Iron Bowls. The ones that are big matchups between 1 and 2 or 1 and 4, or just a top 10 matchup Iron Bowls generally swing Auburn's way.
Yeah.
So I can't really think of any right now that I would list right there. I can think of a couple that I would put in the most excruciating losses.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I'm sure we're both thinking the same thing right now, so I'm not going to elaborate further on that. But more recently, I got to say the Georgia victory in 2017. Just, I mean, I just remember I was watching with my wife in our apartment in New Jersey, and I just remember watching the whole game, just basically just depressed, just looking at that. This is our offense. We have nothing. We had absolutely nothing the entire first half. And then there were like rumors and stuff from Kirk Herbstreit at halftime that Nick Saban's thinking about putting in Tua in. And of course, I knew who he was, but I didn't really know that much about him then. But I was just kind of thinking, you know what? We literally can't do any worse. So our hopes rest on a freshman quarterback. This is what it's come to. And just slowly clawing and scratching our way back in that game, and then only to blow it with a chip shot field goal that we should have been. I should have been able to make that field goal as regulation ran out. And of course, right, just the epitome of kicking in the Nick Saban tenure of Alabama. And it all came down to right there. And we came back in overtime, sacked Jake Fromm way back, and they somehow made a 55-yard field goal, I think it was. And then Tua takes probably the worst sack in the history of college football. And I think I'm justified in saying that. I don't think there's ever been a sack with quite so much writing on it in a national championship, overtime, no less. And you drop, was that 16 yards? And he somehow just the very next play throws a touchdown pass with seemingly easily does it to Devontae. I don't know what the Georgia secondary must have been asleep or something. But I just remember jumping up. My wife was asleep at this time, but I just remember jumping up and my mouth just hung open for probably 5 to 10 seconds. I couldn't actually believe what I just seen. So more recent memory, I'm probably gonna list that one as the most exhilarating for an Alabama fan.
Yeah. So 2nd and 26 takes you back to the 41-yard line, and I was thinking what a conventional person would be thinking in that. I was thinking, despite the bad field goal kicking, you're probably looking to try to kick a field goal here. So you're going to dump it down to somebody, try to get 7, 8, 9 yards. And that's going to be it, because if you go downfield and then it's suddenly 3rd and 26, then you're really in trouble. And you need a fairly big play to get in field goal range for your kicker. And so, yeah, that caught me by surprise, because conventional game planning is you want to pick up 7 or 8, 9 yards on this next play, not go for broke and then set yourself up for a 3rd and 26 where you're really in deep. But yeah, that's what legends are made of, and they pulled it off. And Devontae Smith, my goodness, I don't know what else to say about this guy. When you look at the totality of his career from start to finish, it's remarkable. And when you watch it in real time, I don't think we tend to appreciate it, because when we think of legends, we think of guys that played 20 years ago, 40 years ago. We don't think about guys that we're watching right now, but that's a legendary career.
And you don't think of too many receivers too, man. I mean, the last receiver to win the Heisman is a guy who works on TV right now. Desmond Howard. Legends are, they're usually the quarterback or the occasional running back here and there. I'm not saying receivers can't be legends, but they're not the most numerous ones. But yeah, there's nothing you can say about Devontae Smith's career. I mean, I don't honestly know which one of those 4 receivers is the best one right now. I mean, my favorite receiver is always going to be Julio Jones, but there's really nothing there's nothing more you can say about that guy.
No.
Hey, listen, man, I want to ask you real quick something I was watching on your last live stream. It was about the coaches in the Pac-12. So you listed Clay Helton as the number 7 coach in the Pac-12, right?
Yes.
All right. I actually agree completely with that. You know, he's had a good year. He's had an absolutely atrocious year. He's had mediocre years. So you would think land someone right in the middle of the pack. And I think you did touch on this with a caller after you were done with your guest, but it just seemed like both of you, when y'all are on, were just making it out to be like USC fans are just calling for this guy's head when he's not the worst coach in the world. He's like the 7th best coach in the conference, and I'm sitting here just like watching, and I'm like, to a USC fan, I don't think there is any difference between 7th best coach or 12th best coach in the conference. They're USC. They need to be 1 or 2. I mean, right? I think they're completely justified in not being happy with the 7th best coach in the conference. I mean, don't you?
Well, I don't necessarily know that they're going to be touting my rankings as the gospel truth as the 7th best coach in the conference. But when you look at his record, I'll parallel that situation in some ways to Gus Malzahn. If Clay Helton got fired after this past season, I would not get on here and rant and rave and say that he was robbed, that he should have received another year, that he didn't get enough chances, that he had this great run at USC. How in the world did he get fired? But I don't think he's performed at a level at which it's obvious that he needs to be run out of town. He's winning twice as many as he loses. He's 36-12 in the conference. He did win a Rose Bowl and finish in the top 5 in the country one year. He is recruiting very well right now. He did win the Pac-12 championship the next year after that. He had back-to-back top 10 finishes. He's doing all right.
Well, to me, though, I just think that falls dangerously close into the Mark Richt or Jim Harbaugh kind of trap situation.
Whoa, Mark Richt?
You're keeping your program.
Mark Richt did better than
Mark
Jim
Richt
Harbaugh.
Kept Georgia right there with kind of at the top of the East usually, except for the Urban Meyer years. But they never won a national title, and quite frankly, they only came close once.
Well, Mark Richt did much better at Georgia.
Won it.
He did much better at Georgia than Clay Helton's doing at USC.
But you know what I'm saying here, Margo, that they were stuck in limbo with him. Ask any Georgia fan right now; they'll tell you that they were stuck in limbo with Mark Richt. He was keeping them good. He was giving them records that are usually not fireable records, like Clay Helton was doing these last couple of years, and that's the frustrating part. You're not supposed to be able to fire a coach who's win 9 or 10 games a year, but that's not what these programs want. These programs want to be winning the conference one or every other year and having a shot at a national title every 4 years or so. So that's where you and in the Pac-12 no less. USC fans are looking around thinking, well, there's no excuse. There's no excuse for losing more than 1 game a year right now in the conference. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say Mark Richt is the same caliber of coach as Clay Helton. He's obviously was better, at least at Georgia, not at Miami. He was atrocious there. But I'm telling you, the situation is extremely similar. USC fans are feeling frustrated because they want a better elite coach, but yet the guy that's currently in charge is giving them records that they kind of just have to take because they're not usually fireable records.
True. Most USC fans would say, I'd rather go 5-7 this year and see Clay Helton shown the door than go 9-3 and see him squeak by into another season. Yep. And I understand that.
Yeah.
I was just
That's
pointing.
all I'm saying.
I was just pointing out that he gets the treatment of a Charlie Strong. Like Charlie Strong at Texas was awful. Like he never finished over 500. How do you not do that at Texas? Like he was atrocious. Like I would rarely make a statement like this. And of course, Charlie Strong is such a much better football coach than I could ever imagine being. But I find it hard to believe that we could take one of us and go take over the Texas football program. And I would know enough to be like, okay, I know who good offensive and defensive coordinators are and assistant coaches, and they could kind of teach me how to run the practice. And I could stand on the sideline during the game and watch us go 7-5. It's just, so he's not doing that. Again, he's not had any USC legendary kind of seasons. Pete Carroll, John McKay, John Robinson. He's had none of those. He's had 2 USC standard seasons. Win the Rose Bowl, finish in the top 5, go to another New Year's 6 game, but got blown out by Ohio State. But anyway, they won the Pac-12. He had 2, what you would consider USC kind of seasons. And then he's had, these 8-5, like 2 years ago, their last full season, they go 8-5. They lose to Iowa by 25 points in the Holiday Bowl. That shouldn't happen. That should be your worst season. Your worst seasons at USC should be the ones where you go 8-5 and lose by 4 scores to Iowa, and people can discount it because you just went 11-1, 11-1, 10-2 the last 3 years. So you're fine. This is a bad season. Let's move on. But that's pretty much one of his average seasons. I'm not sticking up for Clay Helton. I'm just saying that USC fans talk about him like he doesn't do anything right.
Well, and for all we know, Mark, I mean, we've seen some life recently in the program that got some good recruiting now. He may be getting better as the seasons come and go. This may be like a Dabo Sweeney. It's not like Dabo walked in and started winning titles. He's pretty mediocre his first few years at Clemson, but he got really good the longer he was there. So maybe if Clay Helton sticks around, they'll start getting better. I got to say, what I was most turned off by, not really turned off, I was kind of laughing at it when it happened, but was that one year USC finished in like the 40s or something recruiting and like last in the Pac-12. That was the most shocking thing to me, that a coach at USC could do that. USC, couldn't even crack the top 25 in recruiting one year.
Well, that's even more egregious than what I talked about with Charlie Strong on the sideline, because I could see myself or any one of us being a deer in headlights on the sideline of a Texas Oklahoma football game, but to go into families' living rooms to recruit top-notch football players, I think I could do a decent enough sales job if I'm USC to out-recruit Colorado and Oregon State. Yeah, that was crazy that they did that bad that year. I don't know what happened, if he just took a long nap that year or what happened, because his other recruiting classes have been good.
Yeah, that's what's so weird about it. I mean, I don't know. I almost think that's going to be like a story that they're going to make a movie out of it in like the next 20 years or something.
Yeah, he's got his other recruiting classes. There's a lot of 8s and 6s and 11s next to his name, and then it was like, I think it was worse than that.
I just remember it being the last in the Pac-12. I don't know what national ranking they got with it, but it's really hard. I mean, anyway. All right. Well, that's all I got, man. Although one of these times I'm going to call back and get on to you about you thinking Alabama has a 92% chance to beat Ole Miss next year. But I'm sure you got other callers.
Wait, how could that possibly be a bad statistic? Is that too low?
That's Mark. at the very best, I would give Alabama a coin flip to win that game.
A coin flip?
92% is insane.
Against Ole Miss?
We had like a 60% chance apparently to win this game last year. We're losing just about everything on offense, and you think we have a 92% chance to win that game?
If you play Ole Miss 10 times, you don't win that game 9.
I disagree. Disagree completely. They're bringing back Matt Corral, second year under Lane Kiffin's offense.
They have.
The main thing I'm going to point to you is I'm not quite sure if you've looked into this or not. This is why I was really shell shocked at your number. Ole Miss has, I don't even know their names. They're like Austin Peay, Tulane, and some other nameless school. Their first 3 games of the year. Then they have a bye week. Then they play Alabama.
Yeah,
Alabama, meanwhile, has Texas A&M right after Ole Miss, and I forget who they have before. I think it's like Florida or something. The scheduling could not be any worse for now if you're Alabama in that scenario. What I pointed out is Lane Kiffin, and tell me if you think I'm wrong. Just please tell me if you think I'm wrong. But Lane Kiffin strikes me as exactly the kind of guy who was going to try and pull like a Van Mullet, what he tried to do with Alabama, where he just completely ignored LSU and spent the next 2 weeks just trying to prepare for Alabama. Lane Kiffin has 3 meaningless games where he should just be able to out-talent them, and a bye week, and he knows how Nick Saban's defense works, proven by the fact that we couldn't do anything to stop him at all last year. You're telling me that with all that extra time to look at Alabama and how his offenses have looked throughout his entire career, you still think they only have an 8% chance to win that game? I think that's nuts.
Okay, you've convinced me up to 10.5%. There we go. All right. they still have to go out and play. It's not Lane Kiffin's offense against Nick Saban's defense, and let's see if they can score 50. They have to go out and play defense too.
Well, I think you were overselling Alabama's team at least at that point in the year way too much.
We are going to be about 7 games deep, right?
We're
going to be 7 or 8 games deep at that point, right? Something
no,
like that.
No. This is only the 5th week. This is the 5th week of the season.
5th week of the season. They'll be fine. 50-50.
Did you watch the game last year? It was like,
yeah, I did.
It was like they had a hot knife through butter. That was their offense versus our defense. There was absolutely nothing we could do to stop them.
Yeah, it was a great game. It was tied with 5 minutes left, 6 minutes left.
I think they even had a lead with 10 minutes left.
Yeah, it's a great game. USC, by the way, under Clay Helton, had the 64th rated class in the country in 2020. 64.
Oh my God! So not even. Wait, no. I guess he's technically in the top half of the country.
He's basically at the bottom of the Power 5. He's.
God, that's weird. I thought he was in the 40s. That's way worse.
64. Yeah. I'm looking at 247 Sports. Yep. All right, reasonable dump. Thanks for the call. We'll see you.
Talk to you later.
All righty. All right. I guess I'll clean up some more of these comments about excruciating losses and exhilarating wins. And should I tell a story? Maybe. So we're talking news, which is, of course, much more important than what we're talking about here. Chuck C., hang up. Quit making excuses for an Alabama loss already to Ole Miss. Come on, man. David is telling us that one of Clay Helton's classes was 76. I don't remember that he had 2 clunkers in a row. Well, this one is 64th in 2020, which is just, again, now a little bit, this is no excuse, but some of that had to do with only having 12 players. The year before was 20th. I don't think we have another one like that, David. No. He was 20th the year before. I really should put my contacts in. And in 2018, they were at number 4. In 2017, we're going to see something similar. They were 4. He had 2 classes, number 4, then 20, then 64. Wow. Kind of gave up on recruiting there for a few years. All right. Great to see everybody here at the Voice of College Football. So most exhilarating win for me, I really can't come up with one for sure. Any win over Michigan from the time I was a wee lad was special. So those Michigan games meant the world to me. They meant more than anything, those Ohio State-Michigan games. So I will say the 1979 Earl Bruce win to complete an undefeated 11-0 season. And the first time I ever saw Ohio State beat Michigan, because they had lost to the Maize and Blue 3 consecutive years. So that one's going to be kind of tough to top. But that was the first. Well, back then, when you're 10 years old, every game's exhilarating if your team wins. So the Earl Bruce win that capped off his Ohio State career, of course, with the headbands Earl 23-20 in Ann Arbor. So any of those Michigan wins, again, the 82 win, the 81 win, the 81 Ohio State-Michigan game was a huge one for me. I remember waking up, checking the weather forecast. The game was in Ann Arbor. Michigan was a 11-point favorite. They were number 1 in the country at one point in the season. And my beloved Art Schlichter Ohio State Buckeyes team had a rough go that year. They lost 3 games. They were down to 6-3 at one point, then won a game. They were 7-3 going to Michigan as a double-digit underdog, and they pulled it out. Schlichter scored the game-winning touchdown with about 2.5 minutes left on the clock. He was pushed into a snow stack. The temperature was like 15 degrees at that game. And I remember picking that game within 1 point. I said Ohio State was going to win that game 13-9. I remember getting up and I thought, this is going to be a slugfest. It's cold out. They say there's snow all over the field. And I went 13-9, and Buckeyes won it 14-9. That one. So that was, I could go through so many games. To finally beat Michigan in 94, even though the game meant nothing in the standings, was huge. Tressel's first win against Michigan, I just went on and on about that for weeks. 26-20 in 2001. Of course, the one that wrapped up the undefeated season that set up the Fiesta Bowl matchup with Miami was huge. They had to hang on for the victory there against Michigan. Any game that they beat Michigan, especially when they were hard to come by in the 80s and 90s, were exhilarating. The best bowl wins for Ohio State, the first few bowl games I saw Ohio State, they lost. The first 1, 2, 3, 4 bowl games, I watched Ohio State lose. So I got used to them losing. And, when you're a little kid, 4 years seems like 40 years. So, I saw them blow a 19-7 lead against Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl in 1980. That really set me off. But then they finally won a bowl game, but it was against Navy in the Liberty Bowl, Art Schlichter's final game. Then they beat BYU the next year, and then they started on a pretty good bowl run after that. They won the Fiesta Bowl against Pitt in 83. The 84 loss to USC in the Rose Bowl, that was tough to take. But yeah, I could go on forever. The 90s losses to Michigan were excruciating. I'm all over the place with the wins and the losses here. But the Alabama win in 2014 to set up the national championship game against Oregon. The only reason that the Oregon game was huge, besides it was for the national championship, but I mean that the opponent was big, was for some reason there was some narrative out there that just Oregon was just so fast and quick. And I was thinking, didn't we see this 5 years ago where we saw an NFL stacked roster at Ohio State take on an Oregon team that had a couple pros sprinkled in here and there, and Ohio State held them to under 300 yards of total offense. One of those Oregon teams that was scoring 48 points a game, Ohio State held them to under 300 yards of total offense and won the Rose Bowl. And so I thought, why is Ohio State a 5-point underdog in this game? I was just flabbergasted that 2014 Ohio State team was an underdog to Oregon. So I took a lot of satisfaction from that game. But to beat Alabama at the Sugar Bowl in the playoff when Saban was on top of the world, and here we are 8 years later, he's still on top of the world. That was a monster win, of course. I couldn't have selected two better opponents to defeat in the 2014 playoff run than Alabama and Oregon, and just the improbable run of a third-string quarterback. That's tough to replace, and really, Ohio State has not had a win like that in the last 8 years. Even though beating Clemson, getting that monkey off the back, that was a big win. Exhilarating wins, though, got to be Michigan games back in the 80s. And again, I could run through all of them, and I ran through about half of them. Most excruciating losses would be the losses to Michigan. But as a sports fan, if you're taking all of sports into context, we're taking all sports. And even though voice of college football here, we talk college football nonstop, and I love the game. I love it, love it, love it, love it. And I could not answer which team had my heart growing up and throughout my life more, Ohio State football or Cleveland Indians baseball, because baseball and football are such different sports where you've got that fever pitch on Saturday afternoon and you only play 12 games. And if you're an Ohio State fan or a fan of a powerhouse like most of you are, then you expect to win every game. And so every game is huge versus being a baseball fan. You love your baseball team. But I certainly poured more hours into Cleveland Indians baseball because they play 162 games than Ohio State football. And I made it through so many bad years of Indians baseball that even when they got good and lost those excruciating World Series in 95, especially 97, as was pointed out earlier, and 2016, and the 07 American League Championship Series that was blown against the Red Sox with a 3-1 lead, there was always something in my mind that just said, well, we're the Cleveland Indians. We're not supposed to win, and we're the underdog, and we've never been any good. So I'm just glad to be here, which was never my football mentality. But the most excruciating loss I have ever suffered as a sports fan, because again, you got to take away the years and go back to childhood when it meant so much more. I state this, for as much as Ohio State and Michigan meant everything to me, watching the Dallas Cowboys lose the 1981 NFC Championship game to the San Francisco 49ers, that's still just, I will probably once or twice a year go on to YouTube and watch that game, and just, it still hurts. It still hurts. The 81 game that most of you will know as, I can't even say it. Yeah, the catch. Yeah. There it is. There's mine. And glad everyone could jump on the line tonight. I'm going to go have the best dinner I can possibly figure out to make for myself and enjoy part of the weekend with my kids. Easter Sunday coming up on Sunday, I believe. All right. Clemson takes to the field tomorrow. Will it be exciting? No. Will it mean something? Maybe for a few players, positional units here and there. But still, what do? We talk college football all the time, so what are we going to do? Going to watch the Clemson game. It's a spring game. It's a scrimmage. We're going to watch the scrimmage, the TV show, and then I will be here live after the Clemson spring game to talk college football with all of you. So roughly, 3:30? 3 or 3:30 after the Clemson spring game. We'll be right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate all the super chats coming in from Joey Foster, BGPO Football Funk, Falcon ERX. Hope I didn't miss anyone. Chuck C, I think might have had one as well. And even if he didn't, he always does. There he is. Chuck C, thank you so much for that. And I almost missed this, so I apologize, Chuck. Thank you so much for the super chat. And I want everyone to know that the most effective way to contribute to the Voice of College Football would be to go to Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App and directly give there. So we appreciate that, and I will certainly acknowledge you. And I'd like to do that in a more formal, organized way. Somebody told me recently that there was a way to, and I didn't figure this out, but be able to hook up the system that I use for the software, for the graphics and everything to, let's say, PayPal, and be able to have those posted to the screen. But regardless, I will acknowledge those soon. So Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App, best way to contribute here. But we appreciate the super chats as always. Chuck C, gave my losses earlier. Did I miss those? Wins, tough. Isn't it, as a sports fan, always to remember, easier to remember the losses that killed us than the wins that we're excited about? It's always the losses we come up with. 1983, Nebraska. So this would be Chuck C. I'm sorry. Where are we? Number 2, 3 wins in a row versus Oklahoma in the 80s. Any win versus Notre Dame. And last but not least, any win versus the Knowles. So this has to be, okay, that's obviously Miami. Sorry, Chuck C. Stay with me here. Yes, so the national championship win of Howard Schnellenberger, rest in peace. And we did a live stream to honor him earlier this week that I thought wasn't fun. Someone passed away, but it was poignant. And man, his legacy is amazing. It's amazing. You can't go to a record book. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, you go to the record book, you look at the final rankings, championships, win-loss percentage is crazy. There you go. With Howard Schnellenberger, forget that. Yeah, you can look at it and realize when Louisville was going 10-1 under Howard Schnellenberger, they had lost for 7 or 8 consecutive years before that. And Miami was going to shut down the football program. And he's winning a national championship 4 years later. All that. It's phenomenal. So he, of course, was on the sideline for the monumental win that was best known in the moment for the disappointment of a great coach in Tom Osborne not being able to close the deal with the greatest team possibly of all time. It was known more for that in the moment, but what has become more poignant has been the rise of Miami football and Howard Schnellenberger being at the forefront of the emergence. So number 1 is the huge Orange Bowl victory of Miami over Nebraska to win the national championship. Number 2, 3 wins in a row against Oklahoma in the 80s. Yes, you had I won't go through it all, but Vinny in 85 in Norman, game that Troy Aikman broke his leg. Then you had the Orange Bowl appearances in 86 and 80. So one was a regular season game. One was a postseason game in which Oklahoma was inexplicably favored in both of those games. And yes, 3 consecutive wins in basically 1 versus 2 matchups. Certainly the last 2 were against Oklahoma. And then, yes, Miami defeating Notre Dame a number of times, but most notably the one after the Notre Dame win in South Bend in '88 that propelled the Irish to its last national championship. The next year, Miami got revenge at the Orange Bowl in resounding fashion, 27-10. There was a big, like, 3rd and forever play, 3rd and 33 that Miami pulled out against Notre Dame, and that kind of signified Miami winning that game. And then, of course, any win against those hated Noles of Florida State. Chuck C., thank you so much for the contribution there. All right, I think we've hit the end of the line. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions here. Christ Jesus is Lord. Thank you so much for that. See you tomorrow after the Clemson spring scrimmage. And if you're on Patreon, please vote for what scrimmage, what spring game you would like us to watch together. That's homage to somebody. I won't go into that story, but as soon as I was about to say together, it came out together, because that's a favorite line of mine from someone who's near and dear, and the GOAT himself. All right. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you soon. Clemson postgame tomorrow. Together.